Hi class, welcome to chapter 2. Now I gotta tell you, if you feel that this material is hard for chapter 2, it is hard, okay? Maybe, I know a lot of you have nursing backgrounds and health sciences backgrounds, you said from your introductions. So maybe it'll be less hard for you, but I thought some of this material is a little hard. In this chapter, we overview some of the genetic sort of basics of genetics and heritability, okay? So we will cover more of this, especially the video for chapter 3 does a really good summary of it. So if you're having trouble with this material, you could go ahead to look at the video for chapter 3 if you wanted to. But I think with the video I have on there, and you should be okay. Use your book, obviously, for the quizzes. That's the hardest thing. Use your book. It's an open book quiz. Really focus on that. Some of the main concepts we want to get from this class, one is this idea of recessive versus dominant traits. Okay, so let me just briefly explain that. I know I grew up playing euchre. Seems like no one around here plays euchre, but people play hearts and spades. Okay, here's one way I look at it, a little tip to understand dominant versus recessive traits. Okay, let's say you're playing hearts. Okay, and I lay down an ace of spades, and you don't have any spades, and you lay down a 2 of hearts. Who wins? You do. Hearts are the trump suit, okay? So think about this with dominant and recessive traits. When the genes line up, okay, it's just like a game of cards you're playing. And if there's a dominant trait and a recessive trait, the dominant trait is expressed, okay? It trumps the recessive trait. Just like the 2 of hearts beat the ace of clubs. Okay, so in order for anything that's a recessive trait to be expressed, you have to have 2 recessive genes lining up, okay? For example, blue eyes, okay? Blue eyes. Having blue eyes is a recessive trait. If I have the gene for dark eyes and the gene for blue eyes, dominant trumps of brown eyes. If I have the recessive for blue eyes, it's expressed. So, the other thing, this brings up a good point too, is that really there's very, very few things that eye colors are one of them, okay? That have what we call a monogenic influence, okay? That means that there's only one gene that has to do with the expression of that trait, okay? Usually it's much, much more complicated than that, all right? A lot of times what it is, it's this interaction, okay? It's a whole bunch of different genes interacting together. This is for things like intelligence, for height, for a host of other things. It's much more complicated than the idea of one gene with one gene. Eye color is the exception, okay? All right, the other things, that we really focus on, I think is important in this chapter, is all the disorders related to genes, okay? For example, you can have Down syndrome is caused by an extra gene. You're supposed to have one gene and one gene. You have 2 genes at one key point. And then you get a disorder called Down syndrome expressed, okay? Another one is Tay-Sachs disease. This is an interesting one, okay? Because so Down syndrome is an example of an oops, like an extra gene there. Tay-Sachs and Tay-Sachs in certain groups where you don't have a lot of heterogeneity in the genetic material, meaning that I don't want to say, it's not inbreeding is the wrong word, it's not negative. When you've had a lot of within a small specific group, you get some recessive traits that will rise up, and Tay-Sachs is one. We see this in Eastern European Russians, okay, where this recessive gene is, and then especially, Eastern European, not Russian, Eastern European Jewish, okay? So within the Jewish community from Eastern Europe, the group that tend to marry within their cultural group cultural ethnic group, and this recessive trait's there. And so with Tay-Sachs disease, it's a really bad one, okay, very bad. It's one where, so if two people with the recessive trait for this disease, the wife, the husband has a recessive trait, they get married, they have a kid, then the Tay-Sachs disease could be expressed. If the Mary and the mother has a recessive trait for Tay-Sachs and the father does not have that, it's not expressed. Tay-Sachs is a really bad one, okay? The baby's born, the baby looks normal, and what happens is that it's this abnormality where they can't break down this protein. And what happens is the protein builds in the baby's brain. So the baby starts off looking normal and is fine, is progressing and developing, hitting all the milestones. We'll talk all about milestones later on, like key important markers that everything's going okay. And then starting about 2.5, 3 at the latest, all of a sudden the baby starts backsliding and showing, and where before the baby could sit up and crawl and walk and laugh and giggle and babble and talk a little, all of a sudden backsliding. The protein is building up in the brain because of this disorder. It can't break it down. The baby's usually dead by age 4. It's really tragic, terrible disease. Another example of a recessive trait would be a sickle cell disorder, okay? I think a lot of us have heard, probably people have heard of sickle cell disorder. That's another recessive trait. We tend to see this in the African American community, and usually red blood cells are like this. You know, the veins and arteries start off big and get more and more narrow, like a street. Think about this, the interstates, and then there's little alleys, okay? With sickle cell trait, what happens is the red blood cells bend over like a sickle. Now, there's not such a problem on the interstate, bend over, there's a lot of room. The problem is when you get into the narrow veins and arteries that it gets caught and starts clogging. It's another example of a recessive trait, okay? Anyway, good luck with this. If you're feeling like this is hard material, it is hard material. At least for me, coming from a liberal arts and psychology background, I found it hard. Interesting, but hard. And also remember, we'll revisit it with chapter 3 at the beginning. The video we'll watch for birth and pregnancy and birth does a really good job of summarizing this all up. So you'll get 2 passes at it. And really, I would pay attention. It's like I said, use your book, all right? You should be able to figure out, even if they're hard questions, use your book for the quiz to find the answers. Okay? All right, well, good luck with chapter 2. Don't worry if it's hard. If it seems hard, it is hard. Maybe it's easy for you. I know, like I said, you guys are all going to be nurses and physical therapy assistant. Maybe you have a stronger maybe medical background than I do, but it's okay. We'll get through this, and it's really much easier after this. This is some of the hard content, and just let the quiz guide you as for when we get to the midterm and we look at this. Look at how hard the questions were for the quizzes, and the material covered on the quizzes. That'll be a good indicator of what's on the midterm. Okay, you all can do this, and we'll see you for chapter 3. And good luck. All right. Remember, stay current on your things, okay? You got to stay current. Some of those discussion board items do not take a lot of time, but if you miss the window and it's past the deadline, you're out of luck, okay? I usually don't do this, but I have to help you guys try to stay current with it. You know, other classes, I don't care. Well, just get it to me before the midterm date. You know, I can't do that to you because it's so important to stay current with this. By staying current, it's how you're going to do well. And even if you don't have a lot, let's say I'm really busy this week. I got a sick kid, sick dog, works a lot of trouble right now with the quizzes. Even if you get the quiz and did half of it right, okay, and you can only spend a little bit of time on one try of it and you got half right, that's better than nothing, right? Because once the deadline's gone, you can't go back to the quizzes, okay? All right, so good. We will see you next week. We won't have office hours. You know, this week's Labor Day. We won't have office hours for that. But we will see you. I will start having office hours the following week. And good luck. And email me if you have any questions, okay? And we'll be in touch. And also, you know, if you have questions and want to have a Zoom session anytime during the week, let me know. All right. Bye. Have a nice holiday weekend, too.